Hey guys, it's Jeremy here at Metal Music Meltdown, back with another video. What I got for you today, guys, is the second installment of my top 5 albums of each year. I've done a video about a week ago for 1970, and we're continuing that series all the way through until the current time. So next year will be 1971. And if you're new to the channel and you enjoy the content, hit that subscribe button down below, give the video a thumbs up to give it more exposure. And list down below any comments of albums you really enjoyed from 1971, either hard rock or metal. And please list below your top 5 for that year as well. I'm always interested to see what people listen to and what their preferences are. And again, guys, this is not a definitive list. This is just based on my personal preference and my own music taste. But let's jump right in. So what I'll do is I'll list my 5 through 2. And then before I list my number 1, I'll give some honorable mentions some albums that didn't quite make my list. So beginning at number 5, I have the Rolling Stones album Sticky Fingers. I'm not the hugest Rolling Stone fan, but I've always loved this album. In my opinion, it's their best album. I had to put it on the list just because it's my favorite album by them. It has the classic songs like Brown Sugar and Wild Horses. The Stones are a good band. I think for me, this is their most solid album that I've heard top to bottom. And it's one of the ones I actually do put on quite frequently still. And at number 4, I have Jethro Tull with Aqua Lung. I think it's their most commercially successful album, and it's my personal favorite of theirs of all time. It's such an amazing, iconic album and such a progressive rock metal classic. With a title track, Up to Me is on there, Cross-Eyed Mary, Cheap Day Return, Hymn 43 is really good, Slipstream is really good. Though top to bottom, it's a really strong record, and Ian Anderson really delivers on this record. It's my favorite one by them by far, and it's just an iconic classic record. It had to make my list. At number 3, again, pretty much, guys, for me, with the exception of maybe one of these bands, I think these were pretty much all my favorite albums from each of these bands. That's kind of how they made my top 5. There were some other albums that just kind of squeaked out the list, but when I was really looking at these bands, again, these were the albums I loved the most from these bands. And they happened to come out all in the same year, so I had to put them on my list. So number 3, I had Who's Next by The Who. Again, one of the most iconic rock albums of all time. Probably sold like 20 million copies. I can't remember what the stats are, but it's a huge album. Bob O'Reilly's, of course, the main song on the album. But My Wife is really good. Bargain is really good. Going Mobile is really good. Behind Blue Eyes is a classic. Top to bottom, this is an amazing rock album. I love the Who. They have a really distinct sound, and you can't mistake that voice and the guitar tone. And I've always loved this album top to bottom. It's their best album by far, in my opinion. And at number 2, I have the mighty Black Sabbath. My number 1 and 2 were so close, but because Black Sabbath kind of was number 1 and 2 in 1970 for me, I decided to give the other band just kind of the edge to put them at number 1. But of course, Black Sabbath in 1971 was Master of Reality. So it was such songs like Sweet Leaf, After Forever, Children of the Grave. Top to bottom, again, another classic Sabbath record. Probably the first stoner metal record of all time. And, early Sabbath stuff is just so iconic. And I love all their early stuff. I listen to it all the time. So yeah, I had to put Master of Reality on my list for sure, and it hit number 2. So before I get to number 1, guys, my honorable mentions. It's just a couple bands that squeaked out the list that were very close. A few that popped in my head as soon as I brought up this year. Janis Joplin had Pearl album, which is really good. The Doors had LA Woman on this year as well. Alice Cooper had 2 albums, including Killers. Uriah Heep had Salisbury come out this year. I believe one other album as well. Budgie had their debut album, self-titled album out this year. Thin Lizzy had their self-titled album out this year. Who else? Let me think. Deep Purple had Fireball out that year as well. Just so many great albums in one year. It was very hard to choose and narrow it down to 5, but I did my best. And for number 1, guys, I'm pretty sure you could figure out what it is. One of the most all-time iconic rock albums ever made, Led Zeppelin 4, with songs like Black Dog, Rock and Roll, Stairway to Heaven, like such iconic tracks on this album. Top to bottom, again, a great album and with no misfires at all. And, with the lineup of Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones, John Bonham, and Robert Plant, it's one of those bands that none of the band members could be replaced. They were so iconic and each member is so talented. That's why Led Zeppelin put out such iconic albums, and I had to put Led Zeppelin 4 at number 1. So again, guys, down below, put what your top 5 would be for 1971, and stay tuned for the next edition of the series for 1972. Until next time, keep it metal.